On February 28, 2025, a scheduled meeting at the White House between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky escalated into a tense exchange, resulting in an abrupt end to discussions and the cancellation of anticipated agreements. The two leaders gathered in the Oval Office with the primary goal of finalizing a mineral rights agreement and addressing the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. The proposed mineral deal aimed to grant the United States access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals in return for continued military assistance in Ukraine's defense. However, the conversation quickly spiraled into a heated dispute. President Trump criticized President Zelensky for what he perceived as a lack of gratitude for U.S. support, stating, "You should be more appreciative, because let me tell you, you don't have any leverage with us. You have options, but without us, those options are worthless." Vice President J.D. Vance echoed Trump's concerns, arguing that Ukraine was not sufficiently engaged in diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. He remarked, "I'm referring to the kind of diplomacy that will actually put an end to the destruction of your nation." In response, Zelensky voiced his apprehensions about entering peace negotiations without firm security guarantees, citing past instances where Russia failed to uphold agreements. He underscored the necessity of achieving a fair and enduring peace, stating, "We do not need just a ceasefire. I have already signed an agreement with Putin in the presence of Macron and Merkel. What kind of diplomacy are we talking about here?" Following this contentious meeting, European Union leaders quickly reaffirmed their solidarity with Ukraine. Kaja Kallas, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, criticized Trump's stance, emphasizing the need for new global leadership and reiterating Europe's unwavering commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, commended Zelensky's composure and resilience, reinforcing the EU's continued support for Ukraine in its defense against Russian aggression. French President Emmanuel Macron denounced Russia as the aggressor and stressed the importance of aiding Ukraine in maintaining sanctions against Moscow. Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called for an urgent summit between the US, Europe, and Ukraine to address the escalating tensions and solidify collective backing for Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer reiterated the United Kingdom's steadfast commitment to standing by Ukraine in its resistance against Russian aggression. Similarly, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressed firm support for Ukraine, emphasizing Canada's alignment with European leaders in upholding Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In recent months, both the European Union and Canada have coordinated their responses to various U.S. policy actions, demonstrating a unified position on several key matters. Earlier in February 2025, President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports entering the United States, affecting major trading partners such as Canada, Mexico, and the EU. Ursula von der Leyen voiced deep regret over this decision, stating that the EU was considering decisive and proportionate countermeasures to safeguard its economic interests. Likewise, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau condemned the tariffs as unacceptable, warning that they could damage the historically strong trade relationship between Canada and the U.S. These developments have fueled concerns about a potential global trade dispute, with both the EU and Canada weighing possible retaliatory measures. Additionally, the EU and several nations, including Canada, have implemented digital services taxes targeting major US-based technology firms such as Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon. In response, President Trump ordered an investigation into these taxation policies, arguing that they unfairly discriminate against American companies. The U.S. Trade Representative's Office has been tasked with assessing potential tariffs on imports from these countries, further exacerbating trade tensions. This move has prompted discussions within the EU and Canada on counter-retaliatory strategies to uphold their taxation policies and economic independence. The third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine became a pivotal moment in international diplomacy, with European and Canadian leaders traveling to Kyiv to reaffirm their commitment to Ukraine's cause. However, shifts in U.S. policy under President Trump, particularly a more restrained approach to supporting Ukraine and an increased push for a rapid resolution to the conflict, have sparked unease among its allies. Canadian Foreign Minister Mélanie Joly acknowledged ongoing deliberations within the group of 7 G7 nations to issue a joint statement on Ukraine, but noted disagreements with the U.S. over how to characterize Russian aggression. This situation highlights the EU and Canada's dedication to a coordinated approach in aiding Ukraine, even as U.S. policies continue to evolve. Amid these geopolitical challenges, the EU and Canada have actively sought to strengthen their bilateral relations. Recent diplomatic engagements have focused on expanding economic cooperation and enhancing collaboration in security and defense initiatives. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, which has been provisionally in effect since 2017, has played a vital role in strengthening the partnership between the two sides, fostering increased trade and investment. In recent months, President Donald Trump's stance toward Canada has become increasingly confrontational. After previously downplaying the significance of Canadian imports, he has now escalated matters further by repeatedly suggesting that Canada should be incorporated as the 51st state of the United States. Through a series of Truth Social posts, Trump asserted, "We spend hundreds of billions propping up Canada for absolutely no reason. We don't need anything from them. We have unlimited energy, manufacture our own vehicles, and possess an abundance of lumber. Without our massive financial backing, Canada wouldn't even be a functioning country." Harsh but true. So Canada should become our beloved 51st state. Lower taxes, much better military protection for Canadians, and no tariffs. These provocative remarks have not only grabbed international headlines, but have also signaled an unprecedented willingness to exert economic pressure on a historically close ally. Trump's rhetoric has oscillated between dismissing Canada's economic relevance and acknowledging its critical role in U.S. energy security. On one hand, he insists that the U.S. does not require Canadian resources, arguing that America is self-sufficient. Yet on the other hand, he frequently contends, if Canada joins as a state, tariffs will disappear, taxes will be significantly reduced, and security will be greatly enhanced. This contradiction reveals a broader agenda. Trump is well aware of Canada's importance as a supplier of crude oil, natural gas, and other vital commodities, but appears to view it as an asset to be controlled through U.S. economic leverage. His language suggests that he does not regard Canada as an equal trade partner, but rather as a resource-rich territory subject to American influence. Beyond his push for statehood, Trump has maintained a hardline stance on tariffs. He bluntly stated, "Canada has treated us terribly in trade, but now they will have to start paying up," imposing a 25% tariff on most Canadian goods while keeping energy tariffs at a reduced 10%, justifying this decision as necessary to protect American jobs and security. According to Trump, these tariffs serve as a tool of economic coercion, compelling Canada to address what he considers pressing policy issues, including illegal immigration and the inflow of illicit substances such as fentanyl. "Without tariffs, we are essentially footing the bill for Canada," he remarked during a press briefing, reinforcing his belief that the current trade arrangement is unsustainable. While his administration frames these policies as measures to enhance national security and renegotiate trade deals, they also highlight a fundamental interdependence. The U.S. relies on Canada for more than a quarter of its daily oil supply. Trump's push for Canadian statehood is not merely inflammatory rhetoric, but a strategic bargaining tool. In a widely circulated Truth Social post, he stated, "Canada should become our beloved 51st state, with drastically lower taxes and much greater security. Our wonderful neighbor will finally contribute its fair share." By portraying statehood as an alternative to economic sanctions, Trump aims to present Canada with a stark choice: greater integration into the U.S. economic and security framework, or the imposition of steep tariffs and economic retaliation. However, this strategy has provoked strong opposition from Canadian leaders. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dismissed Trump's proposal outright, stating it had a snowball's chance in hell of ever materializing. Similarly, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre responded firmly, declaring, "Canada will never be the 51st state. We are an independent, sovereign nation." The backlash has extended beyond political figures, sparking a broader national response. Across Canada, grassroots movements have emerged, with citizens wearing hats that read, "Canada is not for sale," in direct defiance of Trump's remarks. During an unguarded moment captured on a hot mic, Trudeau privately told a group of business leaders, "I suspect that the Trump administration isn't just aware of our critical mineral reserves. They are pushing this 51st state narrative because they want control over them. They know exactly what we have, and they intend to take it." Initially dismissed as an offhand comment, Trudeau's words now reflect growing concerns over Canada's sovereignty and the increasing strain on U.S.-Canadian relations. Over the past 2 months, President Donald Trump has also directed harsh criticism toward the European Union, culminating in the announcement of major tariffs. Below is a detailed examination of his statements and actions during this period. During a cabinet meeting on February 26, 2025, President Trump announced his administration's plan to introduce a 25% tariff on imports from the European Union. He asserted, "The European Union was created with the purpose of taking advantage of the United States. That was its main goal, and they've done a great job at it." He went on to emphasize that under his leadership, this situation would end immediately. A week prior, on February 19, 2025, President Trump accused the EU of engaging in unfair trade practices, particularly within the automotive sector. He stated, "The EU has treated us very unfairly." This declaration was paired with his announcement of new 25% tariffs on European automobile imports, pharmaceutical products, and semiconductor chips. Earlier in the month, Trump had hinted at these forthcoming tariffs, remarking, "I plan to impose tariffs on the European Union very soon." He also suggested that similar trade actions against the United Kingdom could follow, though he expressed optimism that a resolution with Britain could be negotiated. These statements reflect a growing period of tension between the US and the EU, marked by allegations of unfair trade practices and the implementation of significant tariffs. In response to President Trump's announcement on February 26th of new tariffs on EU imports, the European Union has outlined a series of countermeasures and potential retaliation strategies. The European Commission vowed to respond swiftly and decisively to any unjustified tariffs imposed by the United States. A spokesperson reaffirmed that while the EU remains open to dialogue, it is committed to safeguarding its industries, workforce, and consumers from unfair trade restrictions. As part of its response, the EU is exploring counter tariffs targeting various U.S. products. Historically, when faced with American trade restrictions, the EU has retaliated by imposing tariffs on goods such as bourbon, motorcycles, and orange juice. Current discussions suggest a similar strategy, aiming to place tariffs on U.S. exports that would exert both economic and political pressure. French President Emmanuel Macron voiced frustration following a diplomatic visit to Washington, stating that he left with little hope of resolving the tariff dispute. He criticized the U.S. administration's misinterpretation of Europe's value-added tax, VAT, calling the belief that VAT functions as a tariff factually incorrect. French government spokesperson Sophie Primes emphasized that while trade conflicts benefit no one, the EU is fully prepared to respond if necessary. Macron also indicated that if the U.S. moves forward with these tariffs, the EU will implement reciprocal duties on American steel and aluminum, underscoring Europe's need to respond in kind. In November 2023, the European Union adopted the anti-coercion instrument ACI, a measure designed to counter economic pressure from foreign nations. This policy enables the EU to respond swiftly to unwarranted economic actions, such as the U.S. tariffs, by imposing duties or restrictions on American goods and services. The instrument serves as a deterrent against trade aggression and strengthens the EU's ability to defend its economic interests. Germany, in particular, has expressed concerns about the impact of U.S. trade tariffs, warning that such measures could hinder economic growth for years and worsen the nation's existing economic difficulties. The Bundesbank, Germany's central bank, cautioned that these tariffs could have long-term negative effects on trade and manufacturing. Meanwhile, German officials have urged against escalating trade tensions. Economy Minister Robert Habeck stated, "We Europeans are prepared for countermeasures, but we must ensure we are not being pushed around." Germany has advocated for negotiations to prevent a trade war, with EU representatives signaling a preference for diplomacy over immediate retaliation. Some of the proposed measures under discussion include reinstating tariffs on U.S. goods that were previously targeted in 2018, such as bourbon and motorcycles. Several EU member states are also preparing individual responses. Italian Economy Minister Giancarlo Giorgetti noted that nations might need to address the issue independently. He revealed that Italy is evaluating potential adjustments to its digital services tax, a long-standing point of contention between Italy and the United States. Despite firm positions on possible retaliation, EU leaders have continued to call for diplomatic engagement. After his visit to Washington, President Macron reiterated his disappointment in the negotiations, expressing skepticism about avoiding the imposition of U.S. tariffs. He once again criticized the Trump administration's misunderstanding of the EU's tax policies, emphasizing that value-added taxes are not equivalent to tariffs. The trade relationship between Canada and the European Union has deep historical roots, dating back to the early 18th century, when Canada served as a key supplier of fur and natural resources to European markets. Over time, This relationship evolved beyond simple commodity trading into a more structured economic partnership. A major milestone in formalizing trade relations occurred in 1976, when Canada and the European Economic Community, EEC, signed the Framework Agreement for Commercial and Economic Cooperation. This agreement was groundbreaking, as it marked the first formal trade arrangement between the EEC and an industrialized third country, laying the groundwork for deeper economic collaboration. As globalization and economic interdependence expanded, both Canada and the EU recognized the necessity of a more comprehensive trade framework, reflecting their commitment to strengthening economic ties. This awareness led to the development of the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, a groundbreaking accord that significantly reshaped trade relations between the two economies. Negotiations for CETA commenced in 2009 and concluded in 2014, with the agreement being provisionally enacted on September 21, 2017. Its implementation resulted in the removal of 98% of tariffs on goods exchanged between Canada and the EU, effectively reducing trade barriers and enhancing market access. Consequently, bilateral merchandise trade between Canada and the EU has experienced remarkable expansion. Between 2016 and 2024, trade volume surged by 57.5%, demonstrating the substantial positive influence of CETA. The EU's exports to Canada have also seen significant growth, reaching approximately $49.11 billion in 2022. These exports primarily consist of machinery, chemical and pharmaceutical products, and automotive components. Conversely, Canada's exports to the EU amounted to $30.06 billion in the same year, with mineral products, machinery, and agricultural commodities representing key sectors. This increase in bilateral trade highlights the mutual advantages that both sides have gained from CETA. Although Canada has historically depended on trade with the United States, it has actively worked to diversify its trade partnerships in recent years. In 2018, the Canadian government set an ambitious goal to increase non-US exports by 50% by 2025, and the country remains on course to achieve this target. Strengthening economic ties with the EU plays a crucial role in this diversification effort. Additionally, Canada has recently signed trade agreements with other nations, such as Indonesia and Ecuador, further reinforcing its commitment to expanding its global trade network. Another vital area of strategic collaboration between Canada and the EU is critical mineral supply. In 2021, both parties initiated a raw materials partnership to bolster supply chains for essential minerals such as cobalt, lithium, and nickel, resources fundamental to the green energy transition. This initiative aligns with global objectives to ensure a stable and sustainable supply of raw materials necessary for clean technologies, including electric vehicle batteries and renewable energy infrastructure. That concludes this video. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. If our content resonated with you or inspired new perspectives, we would love for you to show your appreciation by liking the video and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your engagement is invaluable to us. You can also check out another video from our channel, now appearing on your screen.